Thanks for checking out this movie review video. This is for the 1990 film A Cat in the Brain. It's a Lucio Fulci film, and I've been meaning to get to this one in particular for quite some time because I've known about it, but I guess it shouldn't have needed to feel like much of a rush to me anyway, because I don't really like this film that much. It's not great. It's super repetitive, and partially for that reason, I don't think this review is going to be as long as the majority of my kind of like deep dive analysis reviews, because there's an interesting concept to this film, but then it kind of just tells you everything up front, basically, usually through the psychiatrist or psychologist, Egon. I forget what his last name, Schwartz, Dr. Egon Schwartz. I'm just going to refer to him as Egon, but because I like the name. And it makes me think of Ghostbusters. But anyway, interesting concept, but they say everything out loud for the most part, and then it's just like a repetition of all these violent, brutal things that Lucio Fulci's seeing and that Egon is doing, because he ends up being the killer. So, yeah. This film mainly is for people who just want to see a lot of interesting kill scenes and good gore for its time. I think the practical effects were really well pulled off, and they look quite good for the most part. But for me, like, I want more story to the film, so I see where some people really like this, but for me, I didn't like it as much. So, give you an idea of what my rating's going to be like. Excuse me, let's get into it. Again, directed by Lucio Fulci, who also did A Lizard in a Woman's Skin, Don't Torture a Duckling, Zombie, New York Ripper, Enigma, Demonia, and on and on and on. He did a lot. But this coming, towards the tail end of his career when there wasn't as many good films coming out from him. I kind of saw 1990 on it, and I'm like, oh yeah, I don't know. This could be not that great. Because that was the time period where stuff wasn't as good. This was written by Fulci as well as Giovanni Simonelli, who also wrote scripts for Blood and Defiance, Kiss Kiss Kill Kill, Knives of the Avenger, Every Man is My Enemy, The Killer Likes Candy, The Crimes of the Black Cat, and Seven Deaths in the Cat's Eye, which is the last two I've reviewed. And Antonio Tentori, who also wrote Symphony in Blood Red, Dracula 3D, Virus Extreme Contamination, Dogman's Rabies. It's an interesting one. Nightmare Symphony, and The Slaughter, just to name a few. Oh, also, alternate title for this film, which you'll see in the beginning of the film, is Nightmare Concert, which I think is better than A Cat in the Brain, but also I know that, like, A Cat in the Brain ties back to what's being shown in the beginning, which I'll talk about in a minute. The original script for this film was supposedly 49 pages and had no dialogue. That does not at all surprise me. This does seem a little bit improv. It seems very ill-prepared, let's just put it that way, especially with Lucio Fulci's acting in it as himself. He's not a very good actor. He's always shown up in his films in like small parts, and that's fine. But when he makes himself the focus of this and he's not a very good actor, it just makes it unintentionally comedic at times, which is okay for me, honestly, because I wasn't loving it because it was so, light on story anyway. So, yeah, his acting, not great. It's claimed that many portions of the film are based on experience from Lucio Fulci's life as a filmmaker. I can see that. I mean, this seems like a more personal script where he's trying to bring some of his personal life into this and make the story really about himself and about his career and kind of his struggles of trying to keep, personal life and his filmmaking life separated because of how in depth you have to be committed to be making film and how much work goes into it, and how even when you're in your personal life, you're kind of thinking about what you need to be doing with it. And I think that's kind of the underlying theme with this film, which is interesting, but again, like, they say a lot of the stuff out loud, and you're just kind of like, okay, we were already getting it pretty easily. The film was released in an unrated state because it wasn't able to get an R rating. I mean, it's pretty easy to see why that is. There's so much brutality. There's so much gore for this film, and like I said, that'll be a huge, awesome stamp of approval for a lot of people, because I know some people are just like, I just want to see good kills, I want to see good gore. This film has that, for sure. Fulci supposedly edited in footage from the following films: Bloody Psycho from 89, Sodoma's Ghost from 88, Hansel E. Gretel from 90, Massacre from 89, The Murder Secret from 88, and Touch of Death also from 88. Yeah. And you can tell there are portions of other films edited into this, and I think that goes towards this overall, like, chopped up, choppy feeling of the film, which, in a way, I think it actually works in favor of the story that's being told, because it's kind of from the perspective of Lucio Fulci, and his mind is kind of, like, going everywhere, and it's set up that way from the very beginning, so it does kind of work in the favor of that storytelling, because it is, like, kind of, like, frantic and all over the place and feeling choppy, like his mental state during the film. So I think it works to a degree, but it also doesn't make for, like, the best viewing experience, in my opinion, because it just feels like you're just kind of, like, randomly, like, over here, we're doing this. Okay, pretty odd beginning with the fake animals feeding on viscera, with the audio being kind of messed up, but when you get to the end of the film, you understand why it's set up that way. That's literally fake cats eating brains. This is the visualization of what's going to be said later by Lucio Fulci's character, that it's like cats are eating his brain. So, I mean, that metaphor, I don't think is the greatest metaphor, honestly, but there's also, like, a loss in translation aspect, because this is obviously an Italian film. It's not English language, so that may be, like, kind of a translation type issue. It may have more meaning. It may be a better comparison in Italian. I don't know. I'm just guessing, but yeah. Then the cannibalism and chainsaw dismemberment scenes. This film lets you know up front it's going hard out of the gate with the brutality, with the practical effects, the blood. It's just flowing immediately, and that's one of those films. I'm assuming that portion where the guy, like, chainsaws up and dismembers the woman's body, it's insinuated he's eating her flesh first, and then he grinds it up into what looks like sausage, basically. So cannibalism. That's a pretty intense scene. I assume that was taken from one of those films that I mentioned had portions edited in. That is really messed up. That's probably, like, the most brutal stuff in the film, in my opinion. Like, the way it's shot, the way it feels disgusting. It feels just messed up, in my opinion. An interesting setup with the gore from Fulci's film becoming something plaguing him in real life. Again, like I was saying, that his career, his filmmaking, his job is bleeding over into his personal life, and he's getting so confused that he's having this split personality situation go on. And I think Gabrielli actually says at one point that, oh, I'm with someone with a split personality or something to that degree. And I mean, that's kind of what they're going at, that, like, there's the Fulci, there's the private Fulci, and there's the filmmaker Fulci, and he's having a hard time reconciling keeping those separated. Cool image of the guy with the chainsaw covered in blood walking at Fulci, but then the quick camera movements are a little bit annoying. This is something I've commented on, which I think he did it a bit in Enigma, and I know he did it in Demonia, where he'll have, like, these weird things where, like, the person's moving towards him and the camera's moving towards the face while they're doing it. I mean, cool image of the guy with this chainsaw, like, covered in blood. It looked menacing. It looked good. It was good imagery. But then that camera movement, like, I don't like those camera movements. It makes me a little bit nauseous when they go on long enough. This one didn't go on quite long enough, but I'm just not a fan of that type of filmmaking. And it's not really something he did early in his career. It was just on these later films when they weren't as good. The introduction of Egon and Katya is odd. They just argue for no real reason, and then Lily answers the door. You're just kind of like, this goes back to the whole, like, 49-page script thing, to be honest. I'm just like, yeah, it didn't seem like there was a whole lot planned out in the first place. So I assume that they're doing that scene because you need to know who Egon is. That's who Lucio Fulci's going to for help. Then Katya is his wife, and you're set up with they don't really like each other that much, so I guess it then makes more sense later when Egon actually kills her, with one of the best kills in my opinion, but I'll talk about that when we get there. And then Lily, I guess, is just like their housekeeper, and I guess she's just there to fawn over Fulci and fangirl, and then just end up being with him at the end, which I question whether that would ever even really happen, because look at her and look at him, and that age difference is ridiculous. But those things do happen in real life, so who really knows? We could do without Egon telling the viewer exactly what's happening to Fulci. It's already pretty obvious what's going on. Again, this happens twice with his character where he literally has no inner dialogue. He's just... He just spouts off everything. He's like, yes, this is exactly what's going on in the film. You viewers are too stupid, I must tell you. But it's pretty clear what's happening. So that just annoys me. The scene where you're hearing Fulci speaking his film direction is an interesting glimpse into that job. It does go on a bit too long, though. I really like that it is a nice glimpse into seeing, oh, okay, this is what his directing job is kind of like. And it is kind of intense. Like, he's continually saying, okay, now you got to do this, now do this, now cue this, now do this. And it's intense. It's a lot to deal with, and you feel like a tension with that job. So I think they did a good job of capturing that, but the scene just goes on too long. And a lot of the scenes in this film just go on too long. The pacing isn't great. And, really in the end, the story is so sparse that it really just seems like this film was an excuse to set up a bunch of cool practical effects and interesting kills. And if that's what you're looking for, you probably really like this film, and that's fine. But for me, I want a little bit more. The nightmare Nazi orgy scene seems to come out of left field, but as Fulci talks, it's a word salad of the shocking and depraved things that he feels compelled to put in his films. Again, that scene goes on too long, but there are elements of it that are good in adding to the overall experience of the film, and especially his characterization in it, because he's just saying all these shocking and depraved things and visualizing this, and it's these are the mental gymnastics he goes through to prepare for making a film, or when he's making a film, because in this story he is in the process of making a horror film. So the woman Fulci blacked out on and started yanking off her clothes says it was thrilling. This is, a prime example of kind of very old male writing of yeah, women will just like it type thing. Yeah, I'm pretty sure she wouldn't have been cool with that. She was a professional woman showing up, and then he blacks out. I think he broke the camera. He kind of flipped out, did some rage stuff, and then started ripping her clothes off, and then later she's just oh no, it was actually really thrilling, I loved it. And it's no, that's not a thing. Not sure why, but the scene of the metronome making Fulci drowsy made me chuckle. Well, I mean, it's probably because his acting isn't great. It's this long sequence of the metronome going and him just his eyes looking sleepy and just focusing so intently on his face, just too much. Interesting twist to have Egon hypnotizing Fulci for nefarious purposes. Obviously, he wants him to think that he's committing the crimes that Egon's committing. Now, I don't know if his whole idea for that was then maybe he'll take the fall. Maybe he'll then kind of rat himself out and be I did this, I did these murders. Or at least if it's assumed that it's him, because sometimes he's physically there when they're happening. He might crack under the pressure of being interrogated because it's been planted in him that he should feel like he actually did these murders. The look on Egon's face when he's killing the first woman with a hatchet and also holding a switchblade is funny, and that's a look that just keeps coming back for him. That made me laugh. I love it's just this maniacal joy at what he's going to be doing, and it's the idea behind it works, but the way he looks, it's just funny. You can't help but laugh at looking at him, and like I said, it happens numerous times. The scene of the messed up corpse being pushed down the stairs is funny. I enjoyed that one. Had a good laugh at it. Solid enough tongue ripping scene, and a nice touch to it that you see the severed tongue actually sinking into the fountain, and the water in the fountain. That's cool. I like how that was shot. And, once again, this just seems like a film where they're just let's just come up with a bunch of cool kills with good practical effects. And there is that, and these are some of them. The melting face in the microwave, though, kind of a cool idea, but I think they really should have made it have more impact and go a little bit quicker by actually just speeding up the footage. I think that would have worked better. The melting was just taking too long, and I think because it took longer, it didn't look as good. It could have looked a lot better if they kind of slowed or sped that up. The guys for What? The guys for the meat hook kill. The meat hook kill did look pretty good. The gore, I think it was supposed to be autocorrect. The gore for the meat hook kill looked pretty good, and the look on Egon's face paired with it even better. Like, they had the actual, like, guts starting to come out. They looked good. They looked, they may have been real. They may have been, like, actual, like, animal guts, because at this point, that was a popular thing to do because of Day of the Dead, Romero's Day of the Dead, and how good things looked there. So I'm assuming that was being done. Also, Fulci did it in City of the Living Dead as well. So, yeah. The scene of the dude beating the woman with the large stick is wild. Once again, we're going back to that same footage, or that same film that it had footage ripped from, of the guy in the beginning who chainsawed up the woman, dismembered her that way, and was committing cannibalism. That stuff's intense. That's messed up. Whatever that film is, if anyone can let me know, that's something. Egon has no inner monologue. For the second time, he speaks aloud what we get and don't need to be told. Again, there's too much at the surface with this, but then again, that's kind of what Fulci had turned to. After he was kind of done with giallo films, he kind of turned to just like a more straightforward, like less coherent. You get what you get, but you're going to get cool visuals for the most part, and you're going to get some cool kills, and you're going to get some wacky left field stuff. So it's to be expected with a late entry in his career. Surprise! A kid's head gets lopped off with a chainsaw. Yeah, that was something. I mean, obviously that didn't actually happen. It was one of those hallucinations that he was having because of being hypnotized. But it kind of it surprised me, and it looked good. It looked really good. And in a lot of film, people won't go that far. Like, they won't have brutality like that with a child. But giallo film's a little bit different. And this is not giallo, obviously. This is not giallo, but Fulci comes from the giallo genre, is how he got, I think, most of his popularity, and then he kind of transitioned over, so he's fine with it. Fulci says the line about being like a cat is eating his brain. Then you understand the scene from the beginning. I already kind of talked about that. It was that moment where I was like, oh, okay, well, now it's not as weird in the beginning of the film. Still weird. Real quick, pause for horror hydration. Throat's getting real dry. What is with the woman singing opera in her sleep? I don't get that. I guess that was the film that he was working on at that time, but why was this woman singing opera in her sleep? I don't understand. I understand then why the husband starts strangling her, and I guess, what's his name? Egon is seeing it at this point, and then he's just like, oh, yep, this is the latest one. I need to recreate this. And it's kind of like I don't know if it's like he needed to do it right then and he couldn't find a better option of getting someplace to get someone, or he was just like, I am just fed up with my wife's and she's right here, so I might as well just make her the victim of this one. Because that's what he was doing, is he was recreating these deaths. Because then people would think even more, oh, it's Fulci. Don't look over here, not Egon, who's speaking aloud about everything. I'm going to bet he would sing like a bird if he was interrogated. Gnarly scene of Egon cutting Katya's throat with a piano wire. That was one of my favorites. That was one of my favorite kills in the film, because it is very intense. It's very brutal. It looks good for what it is. That piano wire was very thick, though. Very, very thick. Kind of an odd choice to not show how Egon ends up dying in the end. I mean, you're told that the cops caught him and killed him, but isn't it better if you just kind of show it all going down? This just kind of goes back to what I'm talking about with this film overall, is they'd rather tell you things than show you things, unless it's kind of these brutal deaths. I don't know, kind of odd. And in the end, you think Fulci is actually overcome by his condition, overcome by these flashes of depraved, shocking things that he's seeing, and just gives in and actually kills the woman when they go below decks or Lily, when they go below decks on the boat. But then it's haha, plot twist. He's just still visually seeing this stuff, still hallucinating these things, and she's actually still alive. So it did get me for a minute. I did think that's the way they were going to go, is he actually killed her, but no. The score in this is a bit zany. Had to point that out. It's a bit zany. Lots of nudity. So if you're one of those people who really looks for nudity in these films, there's plenty for you there. Doesn't really make sense with the actual plot, but, a lot of times it doesn't. This is an interesting meta idea for a film, but it also feels like an excuse to just throw a bunch of scenes together and call it a movie. Yeah. To me, a bunch of later films in Fulci's career felt lazy, and this is kind of one of them. There's a good underlying idea, but the execution just feels like, we'll just slap it together, as is evidenced by the 49-page script with no dialogue. Just saying. The film feels pretty choppy, but it somewhat works for the mental state Fulci is presenting. Correct, I kind of already talked about this, but bears repeating. So that does work to a degree. You do feel the exhaustion from Fulci. This appears derived from being too immersed in his work. They did do a good job of making you feel kind of his exhaustion, his exacerbation with what's going on in his life, and I really do think that was supposed to mirror like how he's felt about his film career and like how it's run him ragged for the most part. So I did like that aspect of it. But yeah, so that's all I have to say about this film. Actually went longer than I thought. I had more to say than I thought I would, but it's not a great film for me. Out of 5 stars with half stars in play, I got to go 1.5 stars. Thought about going 2, just no. Thought about going 2, but I have to put it at 1.5 stars. It's not great. The only reason it's even up to a 1.5 is the concept and the kills, the practical effects. So there's a lot of other not great stuff, but would love to hear your thoughts on the film. Go ahead and put it in the comments. Also, what Lucio Fulci films that I have not covered yet are a must. Another one I do want to do is Murder Rock. So yeah, I'll get to that at some point soon. Do me a favor, hit subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Hit the notification button if you want to know when I'm putting up new videos. I appreciate all that stuff. I also appreciate you taking your time to watch this video. And until next time, keep it brutal.